Chapter 39. Heaven's Roar. A shining and solid line of silver tunnels through an immovable statue, translating into a slippery red upon its retreating end. Running down the realm-stitching rod is that liquefied life, funneling into the belly of the pierced Oma. With this, we have bridged the divine to the corporeal, the spiritual to the material, and that which is abstract to that which is actual. Impermanent beings have constructed, through sheer force and calculated deliberation, a component path to the gods, through the gods, and one that doubles as a weapon against the gods. To be mortal and to strike that which is immortal feels like the peak of a mountain we were never destined to ascend. The cheers of the army are extinguished by this mass realization as they come to it, one retraction of the jaw by the other. They had been overcome with a sense of victory. Alas, as the euphoria dissipated like a wisp of smoke, they now refuse ownership over it. A sense of sacred duty, one of all-knowing, all-acting, and of all-being, which is accustomed only to deities with their infinite experience, has now befallen them. Mere mortals now liable for themselves like never before. King Elementor reemerges from his chariot, his face upon the sky and their fatherly cosmos, as he speaks to his subjects as they were his own offspring. My children, my responsibility to you is great, and may only be maintained with your continued trust and permission. My duty may only be fulfilled with you and by you and to you. I am simply where our wills converge as a race. With this being said, from the repository of our own and spirit, and of that of our ancestors, I deliver this formidable enemy of ours to his demise. Make your verdict known to me. Shall I make waste of this bane? The Omani, frightful of the scope of Tiamatu's retaliation, ought he survive and free himself, yet refuse their hesitant intimidation and ignite into a roar of approval. Elementa speaks the command. Command! Heaven's roar! Lancing through Tiamatu's encroaching, dismal, and world-eating fog, thus reintroducing the stars to our once flourishing world, a structure of pure light in the shape of a seven-pointed star illuminates and paints the sky in a righteous white tint. A screech that could be heard from all corners of Oma, from its deepest depths to its mightiest peaks, blares in the awakening of the luminous form as though it were a divine beast. Its beauty, the cultivation of time, willpower, energy, and strategy, each point, including one at the center, representing one of 7 kingdoms of old that still live to this very day. The origins of the civil Omani, Krumar, the first capital, Alatoria, Omin, Fath, Marmar, Vithrel, and my modest yet dense home village, which was also one of the great beginnings of our kind and home of the lineage of Parias, Essel. All of which gave way to the new capital, Nalarta, at the dawn of the First Accord, which united the once disbanded Omani. This center point is where all their power mingles within the star. Tiamatu raises his brows and chin to this weapon of concise destruction. His visage remains as enigmatic as a riddle, displaying no hint of passion nor conviction. The god inhales deeply, as this is all he can do in substitute to tensing up against the certainty of being swept by a celestial tidal wave, a deluge of cosmic downpour. From the center of the starry cannon, a fiery beam, no, an inferno's pillar beyond the skies, blasts through the atmosphere, engulfing the pale god along with the very ground below and around him. The radius of the beam, 200 or 300 amma wide. The blast burrows several times that deep into the crust. All that is visible within the fury of its light is the dark silhouette of the god, withstanding the storm, levitating against it in insurmountable defiance. And now that the assault is exhausted, he is revealed as nothing but organs, bones, and the scalding fluids betwixt. The god of suffering has been stripped of his skin and muscle, floating bare. He has been emaciated and pruned to his unclad basis. Yet, as I witness this, his complete self begins to reunite with the skeleton of his glory. String by string, muscle and fiber encompasses his frame and snap and thread together his prior structure into the being he was introduced to us as. The dark cuffs and collar of his imprisonment, too, is reformed as though a part of the god. He is renewed. He is as though nothing had happened. Albeit, the scars and lesions of his infinite torture are present. Alas, none of the damage we have inflicted can be seen. His recovery speed and regenerative fervor is unlike any I've ever experienced. It is leagues faster than even my own at the highest Drakkeen form. Elementa, Eviar, Gravata, and Payman all share the same expression. Utter disbelief. Only Relindur appears impassive. After all, he has properly proven himself right. The Salvadaya is fully subscribed to the prophecy of his sacrifice being a prerequisite to defeating Tiamatu. A conviction as resolute as his cannot be ignored once one has felt it. He knew the canon would not prevail, but he let them frolic in their fantasy whilst they accused him, silently, of his. It was all for nothing. Those 10,000 or so lives, needlessly and pridefully forfeited. The cultivation of for all those years bore no significance. All of it has been in vain. Gravata and Payman approach the fresh crater which encircles the floating immortal. One by way of bending space, the other by directing the growth of the roots beneath him. Elementa orders the withdrawal of all other wolves. Eviar does the same for the Tamas, then joins the two Alpha Generals. This is no place for anyone under the absolute pinnacle of rankings. They will just become a hindrance in this battle. Heads to protect instead of swords to coordinate. This has become painfully obvious now. Relindur turns to me, smiles, then proceeds to make his way to the god himself. I begin to reach out to stop him, but an unnameable force prevents me from making contact. I cannot change his will, nor his destiny. It would be an insult to try. I only trail behind him, far enough as to grant him the stage.
My benevolent Salvadaya, no.
Eviar shakes his head at Relindur once it dawns upon him that his only idol approaches his final hour. Relindur must have told Eviar of the prophecy long ago. The mucky essence of the pale god has returned, looming over us, staining our skies once more. Elementa's inordinate offensive had only temporarily fanned away and lifted our great enemy's putrid and unrelenting mist. Relindur takes note of the undeterred sludge above us and makes certain that Eviar does too in an attempt to avoid discrediting the dire situation that we've all found ourselves in.
Our time was well spent, friend. I ought not forget nor tarnish it with ingratitude,
Relindur says to Eviar.
I cannot accept this as easily as you. At least let me try to defeat him myself before you throw your life away.
Eviar pleads with his Salvadaya. The Alpha Generals, confused at the context of the conversation, curiously eavesdrop, but with their eyes fixated on the enemy. Tiamatu simply watches us, patiently. None have made a decisive move.
It is you who would be throwing your life away, Eviar. I am destined to do this. You would only part me with sorrow as you left, and I would have to follow through with the prophecy nevertheless. There would be no benefit to either of us if you fought now, for it would result in 2 deaths. My path only requires but one.
Eviar violently grasps Relindur, pulling him into a tight squeeze, hugging and embracing him. A gesture of affection I've never seen the Tamas exhibit. Flakes of Eviar's skin peel and erode into the wind from Relindur's deteriorating essence. His blood boils into steam, his bones crack and shift, his body quivers and shakes. It is hard to love the Salvadaya, yet his appeal demands it. How strange it must be, the relationship between these two. The highest-ranking general of the Tamas, willful servant of a young Salvadaya. Eviar is as obedient as a son, but also as protective as a father. This dynamic reveals itself to me in this moment. One I can grasp, but never hold long enough to understand and study it in its entirety, for even the moment itself is as fleeting as Eviar's hide. The bloody warmonger releases Relindur, but retains his tears, accumulating and locked behind the dams which are his lids. The shape of the Salvadaya imbued burns upon the general's body and nearly eroded his armor, melting the straps holding the pieces together. Parts of his clunky sheathing of vast nuts and steel collapse from his frame, plunging into the ground, leaving only the primary layer as cover.
Thank you for all that you've done for me, Evia. You were the only one who could bear the responsibility of caring for me. You never denied me my wishes. You never questioned my aim. You always had my best interest at heart. In a world where I could not touch or be touched by anyone, it was your embrace that challenged my isolation and this disease. For this, I can never express the gratitude I have for you. It is immeasurable by any standard of reality. May you find many blessings until the day we meet again. And I promise you, we shall meet again.
Rielandor turns away from Eviar. His smile fades into a stern conviction as his rotation grinds to a halt with him pivoted toward Tiamatu. The pale god begins his trek amongst the nothingness upon which he rests his souls, walking upon empty air once again. Gurvata seems perplexed. Did he not witness Tiamatu do the same thing upon our coming to Nalarta's walls?
He defies gravity. He negates it and creates a platform out of a force I do not understand,
Gurvata says as he directs his concerning statement to Payman. His eyes widen in alarm before he continues.
He let us assault him before. He could have nullified my down and tether commands, but he made a point not to. He is toying with us.
He tenses up. I am uncertain of Gurvata's analysis. It is more than likely that fear has finally captured him. The force Tiamatu enacts and that of Gurvata's are distinguishable. He simply lacks my eyes to see this.
Stand down.
Eviar wipes the weakness from his face as he orders the Alpha General, growling in his tone.
You have no right to command me, Tamasu scum.
His backlash is most assuredly influenced in part by the circumstances, but it is nonetheless uncalled for. We cannot retain the prerogative of bickering with one another in this instant. And about this I am right. A javelin of solid ice plunges through Gurvata's chest and carries him off with it, far into the cold dark. Payman is swift to react, shooting a flurry of branches from his fingertips, blossoming sporadically and abundantly with flowers of feathery petals to intercept him. He successfully catches the hurled alpha within the main bud, cradling him to the surface. Alas, Gurvata is departed. My Draken eyes witnessed it well. He died the moment that spear penetrated his bust. Payman rescued a corpse worth burying at best.
I ask that all of you recede. At the very least, distance yourselves far enough away so that I do not involuntarily kill you.
Rielandor instructs us, yet standing at the edge of the crater whilst sustaining his roped sight on Tiamatu. We do as he asks.